What's up everyone, Wave here. Today I got this one right here, ranking every Souls game from worst to best, including Elden Ring. Let's react to it.
9-second intro, go. Today I'm going to be ranking every single Souls game from worst to best in my own personal opinion and explaining why I like some games more than others. This list changes a lot for me, but here's what I think right now. Coming in at number 7, my least favorite game in the Souls series is Demon Souls. Interestingly enough, I also think it's the easiest game in the series. To be
I haven't played this one, but I've watched it.
fair, I've only played the remake since I don't have a PS3. Sorry, I was too busy pushing children out of my way at Walmart to get a PS5. I probably ruined like 3 kids' Christmases last year, but I got to play Demon Souls, so, you know, silver lining. Anyway, as much as I love this game and was surprised at how well the gameplay held up after all this time, I still think it comes in last place for me due to the bosses. And I've said this before, I don't think the bosses are bad in this game at all.
They're quite easy, to be honest.
I'm just not a huge fan of the gimmick puzzle bosses, and that describes 90% of the ones in Demon Souls. Last time I mentioned that, a ton of people were like,
you'd rather just have a dodging simulator? That's all just reaction time. It takes no skill at all.
Yeah, I don't care. It's more fun. I really love the world in this game though, and I think the level design is excellent. It's just not as fleshed out for obvious reasons, and after playing the others, it definitely shows.
Yeah, it is because it's the first one.
Certain things like the 525,600 upgrade mats get annoying, especially with the drop rates being ridiculously low for some. I grinded so much on my first playthrough, I pretty much just do New Game Plus now. The world tendency stuff is fun to mess around with sometimes, but most of the time I forget to skydive in the Nexus, leaving me wondering why I'm all of a sudden trash at the game. On top of everything else, the game is pretty short. It took me like 15 hours to beat it the first time through, and that was during finals week of my last semester of college, but, you know, priorities. I will say I find myself coming back to this game more than some of the others, but I think it's because it feels less stressful than the others, and the world is really immersive to me. And to be fair, my rankings change pretty much every time I play these games again, so this is my current list after completing each game a few times. So yeah, Demon Souls is last in my mind as of right now, but like I said, it's almost entirely due to the bosses. Next up on my list is Dark Souls 1. I know, get your little hate comment fingers ready. If I was being objective, Dark Souls 1 would probably rank a bit
like for many people, Dark Souls 1 is like the top tier Souls games, but in my opinion, because I've no nostalgia bias, I think it was one of the weaker ones. But yeah, again, like Demon Souls, I think it's one of the first Souls games which just took the first steps to be greater than the other ones, you know?
Higher on this list, but after my last playthrough, I really just didn't enjoy it as much as the others. I think a lot of this is due to the slower pace of the game with the rolling and running and healing, but it ended up frustrating me more than
this one feels more tactical, like in Dark Souls 2.
anything after playing the other games. The combat in this game just never gave me the same rush as the other games, especially with the bosses. Once again, most of them just felt too easy up until the DLC, where the slow rolls actually started bothering me because they really stepped up the boss fights there.
Okay, if he sees this like this, that he wants this fast-paced shit, I can immediately guess what number 1 is.
But even with my complaints, I can't deny
what the top Souls games from his
how incredible the interconnectivity is in this game, and I think it would have been bumped up a few spots if it had continued through the second half of the game as well. There's also just a lot of downtime and running around, which can definitely be fun to a certain extent, but I think they executed that part better in the later games.
Like this one has the best atmosphere. Like one of the best
boss
ones.
Fights just felt slow, and fighting multiple enemies is such a pain in this game due to your speed, which makes it hard for me to enjoy it as much after playing the other games. I do think the story is really
I like truly hate multi-encounters in the older Souls games. Like, it's fucking disgusting.
Strong here, so it's a shame I don't really care about it at all. I just like to play. What? It's a video game. I think this game was executed perfectly for the time and will always be known as one of the most iconic experiences in all of gaming, but in comparison to the rest of the series, it's gonna rank second to last for me. Coming in at number 5, we actually have Bloodborne. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
Please hold your comments and questions and subscribe right now until the end. Number 5 is gonna be Dark Souls 2. I almost put this one a little bit higher, but when
to be honest, I'm being fucking honest, I know this is like one of the, many people see this one as one of the worst iterations in the Souls series, but for me personally, full nostalgia bias, I fucking love this game. This is like my top tier game. I think it is on number 2, I guess. Like top 1 is, but like I can say my top 3. Top 1 is Bloodborne, when we got Dark Souls 2, and then Dark Souls 3. That's it.
When I went back to play it, I just couldn't. Also, I just realized these are all in order so far, but I have a feeling that'll change soon. Dark Souls 2 almost ranked a bit higher for me because it was by far the most addicted I've ever been to a video game, and I genuinely have no idea why. I played Dark Souls 1 and 3 first, and for some reason, this game just got me. This one I actually started during finals week of my junior year in college, and within 3 days, I had over 24 hours played in
I had the exactly same addiction with this game. It's insane.
Dark Souls 2. Needless to say, I had to hit a couple professors up asking if they could round my D- to a B+, but that's why I'm a YouTuber now. All that aside, I really just love the world in this game and the freedom they give you. It feels like a different form of exploration from Dark Souls 1. It's almost hopeful in a sense. They kind of give you hints at things
Yeah, it's still a linear game, but you can take like different paths, like in Souls 1.
you'll discover later on in the game, so it keeps you interested to find out what happens. Majula is also the best hub in the series with the best music. Don't at me. Does anyone even say that anymore? And I hate to say it, but I kind of like the quantity.
Like back in the day when I was actually doing like good content, like tutorials and shit, where I needed to cut shit, I always had the Majula background music in my background. I love it.
Approach they did here to some extent. The only reason it ranks lower is because the controls still feel a bit clunky, the agility stat is dumb and makes the first part of the game frustrating, and the bosses are pretty weak for the most part. It also has some of the most aggravating levels, enemies, bosses, you name it. But I still love it for that reason. Oh, and also the fashion, weapon variety.
It's sometimes disgusting and straight up unfair. There are moments where you can't literally do shit if you don't have a right build or if you don't do something very specifically. That's a problem with Dark Souls 2, but I also like it therefore. Like I had so many frustrating moments with this game, but I don't know why, but I still love this one the most.
And unique additions like the bonfire aesthetics and fragrant branches of yore are absolutely beautiful. Moving on to number 4, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Once again, get those little typers ready because we're going with Elden Ring. I don't think I need to explain this one much more. Elden Ring is an...
For me, it's below Dark Souls 2 and 1, to be honest. It's above Demon Souls, but...
incredible game, but I personally prefer a bit more direction in my games, specifically how FromSoft does it, because I think it makes for a more balanced experience. The open world was an awesome feature, and I'd love to see them do it again in the future, but I kind of prefer there being a little bit more...
At the beginning, open world truly felt so fucking great, but when you get to the end game, you notice the flaws in these games, and those are major flaws.
More structure for games like this. A lot of the mini bosses were way too easy for me, and it felt like a waste because if they were harder, it would have given me a lot more playtime. But then if I try to keep myself under leveled, the main bosses become way too challenging. It's just a balance I couldn't really find on my own, and it took away from a lot of my enjoyment in Elden Ring.
Like those side engines, you could literally one-shot so many bosses in there, but when you got to like the main stuff, it was necessary that you just maxed out your shit, you know.
Aside from that though, the game feels great.
You need to play efficiently.
The world is super fun to explore. There is an absurd amount of content that's worth way more than the price tag, and it's gotta be game of the year this year.
True.
The weapon and build variety is so much fun to mess around with as well, and I love all the little features they added to make the game more convenient. Another problem I had that I've touched on before is the bosses. It feels like they do too much damage to you but don't have enough health, as opposed to the other games where
this is the first guy who actually mentions it. The bosses don't have enough health but do a shit ton of damage. I would love it if you, like Millennia, we could maybe just double the health and nerf waterfall flow dance a bit, like that one broken move, and I would be fine with that boss.
Bosses do less damage to the player, but
would still be pretty fucking challenging. You need to be like on high alert all the time because it takes so long. But the most broken move is not that broken anymore.
Have massive health pools. I'd rather have more room for error but a longer fight than a boss that will one-shot me instantly if I mess up. I can talk about the pros and cons of this game for
something like the Gale fight, man.
But I think most FromSoft fans will see where I'm coming from here. I'm not taking anything away from Elden Ring at all. It's just a different type of game than the others. Coming in at number 3, we have Dark Souls.
I would agree. It doesn't really fit into the Souls series, to be honest.
Souls 3. This might be a shocker, I know, but keep in mind that it was my first Souls game ever, and have you seen the bosses? This one is extremely biased being my first Souls game, and I'll never forget beating the Abyss Watchers for the first time and getting that rush that makes these games so addicting. The movement in this game feels great, and I know a lot of people were pissed because the rolls were too fast, but I think they paired this with faster combat to offset the change. Also, don't be a boomer, embrace the change.
And I can say right up front, this is on my top 3 because of the boss fights themselves. Like, those are one of the best boss fights in the series. Like,
Come on. I will say,
It's
after
insane.
completing all the Souls games, it's definitely one of the easiest, but some of the bosses still give me the most trouble of any game in the series. The endgame and DLC bosses feel perfectly
man.
balanced and give you that feeling of satisfaction that drives us all to
Love
say
that
get
fact.
good to the random kid struggling on the internet. I will say, I think most of the levels are pretty
Fuck this part of the array. Those dudes who drained your HP, like your max HP, it was so disgusting.
unpleasant. If they were any better, Dark Souls 3 would have been my #1 spot. Pretty much all the levels leading up to Irithyll are a pain to go through, not because they're super hard or complicated, they just don't feel super creative or exciting to explore. Another
The thing about this game is the settings are a bit weird because this game feels so bright apart from the others. Like with Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, those games feel much, much more darker and had like this warm filter on it, you know?
Another small
This feels a bit modern, which is a bit bad in my
issue I have is how easy it is to R1 spam through most of the enemies in this game. It's not a huge problem or anything, but it definitely makes the game feel like a joke at times. But I still think this game has some of the best
easy
and
with
worst
some
enemies in the
enemies.
series, which made it a bit harder to rank for me. It has some of the highest highs and the lowest lows, but it's probably the game I've completed the most just because the bosses are so damn good. This was a perfect way to
Yep.
end the trilogy, and it's my favorite of the 3 Dark
Darky
Souls
Dominion.
games. Before we get to #2, just give me 10 seconds to show you something that'll make your life a lot better. If you want to get access to games and DLCs early or watch shows you normally couldn't get access to, you can get Atlas VPN
Go
right
support
now
them.
for only $1.99 per month. Use the link in the description
I
and
like
try
the
it out
list.
now. The deal isn't going to last long. Thanks to Atlas VPN for sponsoring the video. Let's get on to #2. Coming in at #2, the runner-up is gonna be Bloodborne. I'm assuming most of you expected
Oh.
this to be #1, but it
Oh,
has
I thought this was number one,
a
man.
few things that bumped it down for me. I understand why a lot of the huge beast bosses were included here, but I personally prefer the humanoid bosses like
Same.
Gehrman and Lady Maria, and I wish they had more like them. But the ones they do have are some of the best in the series, and they never get old for me.
The thing with beast bosses is, yeah, you need to get into them to dodge their attacks properly or to be more aggressive. If you are far more away, it feels more dangerous at least. But your camera was like stuck in them. It was so annoying, man.
The setting and
Fuck's
theme of
sake.
this game is a big part of my love, and I think the way they designed the world is incredible. On top of that, the level design is amazing, and the way they connected the
Yep.
world was mind-blowing every time.
This one has the best level design out of all of them.
I think everyone loves this game for its horror theme, and it's a shame they still haven't made a remaster. Let's be honest, it's basically a free $70 from all of us if they just remaster the game. One thing I didn't like about this game is how confusing it can be. I played through Bloodborne tons
bit,
of times,
yeah.
and I swear I still have to look something up at least once in every playthrough. And before you call me an idiot in the comments, I still have feelings. Actually, I'm kind of desensitized at this point, but still, I don't want to hear it. The other issues I have with this game are small things that I've touched on before, but things like the finite healing system, trying to farm for blood vials and bullets can be a pain if you use them up early. Not being able to rest or travel from lamps is a pain as well, but that's really more of an inconvenience. The chalice dungeons are one aspect that
It was intended, though.
most people seem to hate, but I actually don't mind them. Sure, they can be a grind, but when you've played through the main game a dozen times already, it's kind of nice to have something optional to switch it up. But I think the core combat elements in this game and the rally system are what really make it great, and I'd love to see this return in a different style, like a Western or a futuristic game from the developers in the future, or just Bloodborne 2.
Maybe with Armored Core.
Anyway, moving on to the one that's gonna piss everyone off the most because it's not even technically a Souls game, we have Sekiro. This went from my least favorite FromSoft game to my favorite in the span of about 6 months. It took me forever to get into this game because I kept trying to play it like a Souls game, but on my
This is the least exploitable Souls game I know of. Like, yeah, well, I don't know anything which is like completely broken. You truly need to learn the bosses. You truly need to learn everything. Like in the other Souls games, you could just abuse some broken ass system. Here you don't. Here you need to really get good.
third attempt at playing it
But I haven't played, so it's not on my list.
through again, the combat finally
be high
clicked
roll.
with Genichiro.
Yeah.
The level design, the combat flow, and the bosses all make this game absolutely perfect for me, and while this became my #1 FromSoft game fairly recently, I think it's gonna stay like that for a while. A lot of
Looks
people
gorgeous.
dislike the lack of build variety and say it gives less replayability, but I don't know why I feel like I can keep playing this game over and over without getting sick of it. The boss rush mode really solidified this choice for me as well.
There's a boss rush mode? What the hell?
Giving
Damn.
me the opportunity to fight bosses over and over and really master each one of them. The
That's
way I
nice.
describe this game is the hardest to learn, but the easiest to master. And once you master it, it doesn't get boring, it just gets more satisfying.
Yeah. Like if you've mastered those boss fights, those fights feel more like a dance, man. You know?
In the other Souls games, if something is too easy,
Take
it's
your
just
turn.
not that fun. In Sekiro, it still gives you that rewarding feeling for each boss because you know their moves so well. The only thing that makes me debate if this game will stay at number 1 for me is the lack of content. The main game has tons of things to do, but I really wish they added a DLC or
Like
something.
this the only Souls game which doesn't have any DLC, yeah.
Extra prosthetics to grind for. I think the skills and prosthetic tools are good to give players that feeling of build variety because you can use each one to your advantage for specific bosses, but I would have loved at least some new weapons like a spear or some daggers. But I think this is the most consistent game in the series and is the closest to perfect I've seen in a video game. Also, someone asked if I could do an outro for this video and I said,
No. Damn.
bosses are my
Oh, this was next year. I'm gonna react to this one next time. Or tomorrow, I think. He does great videos. Go subscribe to Ember. Go like his videos. Like this one.
thinking every
And I appreciate it if you've watched it. Yeah, man. It's the last thing I want to say. I guess if you want to see more of this shit, just leave a sub. Just leave a like. And that's it. I guess see you next time. Wafer out.